morning or good afternoon to all of your present here. सब मजे में? कैसा लगा माइम परफॉर्मेंस? समझ में आया? Good. So I think it was a wonderful performance and a fantastic beginning to this session. And that being said, Batra sir, it's such a pleasure and an honor to be sitting next to you at this Vadodara Literature Festival. सर हम जानते हैं कि आयुर्वेद तो भारत की एक प्रथा है, एक प्रणाली है और भारत के मूल से जुड़ा हुआ है, रूट्स से जुड़ा हुआ है. But today we are also going to be talking about homeopathy. वैसे तो होम्योपैथी ऐसा माना जाता है that was not probably invented in India, but now it is practiced the most in India. Before I begin my formal questions to you, would you want to talk about homeopathy first? How the origin or the root of homeopathy वो कैसे शुरू हुआ और कैसे भारत तक पहुंचा? उसके बाद हम आगे के सवाल करें.
Sure. First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. बहुत शुक्रिया और आप सबको मिलकर मुझे बहुत खुशी मिली है. Thank you very much. I know many of you here are medical students, are homeopathic students, and I know that you're going to be amazing, fabulous homeopaths in the future. So thank you for choosing this profession and thank you for attending this talk. Homeopathy, as you know, was founded by a German doctor, Dr. Samuel Hahnemann. He was an MD from the University of Leipzig, which is in Germany. And he gave up his practice because he said, I'm a doctor who and I cannot treat my own son because he died of some ailment. And so he started translating books, and in that he came across a footnote. And so experimentally and anecdotally, homeopathy was born on the basis of likes cures likes, which is today the foundation of the vaccine therapy. So homeopathy kind of founded vaccination in concept 250 years before it actually came on the scene. Yes. And to come back to the India story, therefore, he had a lot of followers, and one of them was an Austrian doctor, Dr. Honecker. And homeopathy came to India through Mahatma Jeet Singh's time. And he had a paralysis of the vocal cord. He kind of lost his vocal cord, he lost his voice, and there was nobody who could treat him in India. So of course his great people told him, his advisors, कि आप इस डॉक्टर को वहाँ से बुलाइए ऑस्ट्रेलिया से, वो आपका गला जो है ठीक कर देंगे. And so the first homeopathic medicine that was given on Indian soil was a medicine for sore throat, called aurum triphyllum. And from that day onwards, homeopathy has not lost its voice. It's found its voice, and it's gone all over India and then all over the world. So he was then asked to stay back, and because of the wonderful, amazing results that he got through homeopathy. And then the missionaries took over. They started homeopathy clinics all over India. And then, of course, the first college was established in Bengal, in Kolkata. And almost every Bengali today has a homeopath, either on the street or on the road or a pharmacy or a doctor in the family. And from there now it's gone all over India and then all over the world.
So what does the word homeopathy mean?
So homeo means similar. Just like how you have homosexual, not a good example, but that's how it is.
Of course.
And pathy is the study of. So it's based on the principle of likes cures likes, which is very similar to the vaccine therapy.
Likes cures likes.
That's right. So what happens is that you actually introduce into the body something which was caused in a healthy human being. Let me give you a very simple example.
Okay.
It's very simplistic, but it's easy to understand. But it's not really how it works. But just to give you an example. So for example, if you're cutting an onion, what happens when you're cutting an onion? Your eyes start watering, your nose starts running.
Yes.
So this is an example of a reaction coming from something which is normal, from an onion, a normal product.
Right.
Now, if I see a patient who has similar symptoms, running of the nose, watering of the eyes, and he's got a cold like that, if I make a medicine from onion, he will get cured.
Oh.
So that's the simplest example of likes cure likes.
Oh, super. And that is how homeopathy works.
That's exactly how it works.
Super. Very well put and very well explained, sir.
Thank you.
So now tell us about your entrepreneurial journey. How did you become the first generation entrepreneur?
What a difficult question. You're going to need a whole session just to answer that one. There's a book of mine called The Nation's Homeopath, which is a bestseller by HarperCollins, and there is a play done on that as well. So I think if you read that book, you will actually find some of the answers over there. But since I'm invited here, I need to also talk about it. I think everything in my life has happened by accident. Just like how homeopathy was formed by accident by Samuel Hahnemann, so also my entrepreneurial journey started by accident. And it also started with good intentions. I want to share with you 3 interesting stories because
Please.
stories are easy to remember.
Sure.
So when my son, who's now the MD of the company and vice chairman and also a trachologist from London and also homeopath, when he was qualifying his homeopathy course, I did not have money to buy a clinic for him in Mumbai.
Okay.
And I then thought, what is the next best thing to do? And I didn't want my son to sit with me because I always believe that in medicine, you need to be very individualistic.
Okay.
You cannot have, no matter how good you are and how good the next generation is, patients will always say, "Oh, जो आपका पिताजी थे वो बहुत अच्छे थे." You're not half as good as your father is. And that's really the truth. So you cannot earn medicine or patients in legacy. You have to prove it yourself. So it's very important that you have to start your own practice. You have to have your own individuality, even if you are working in the same environment. So my brother was a builder in Bangalore, and he offered me. He said my family had moved to Bangalore by then, and he said, "Okay, I'll give you easy paying terms. आप एक यहाँ पे एक flat ले लो, and you can send your son over here." So I built my first clinic in Bangalore in 1996. I'm sure many of you were not even born there, which was outside Mumbai. And I very passionately for 1.5 years built everything over there and converted it into one of the finest clinics. And I then started practicing 10 days in Bangalore and 20 days in Mumbai. And the idea was to give my son a kind of a set practice, and then he could take over. Fortunately, that clinic did so well that it became a high revenue practice clinic, and actually we did more turnover than an allopathic leading hospital in the city as well. So that was the success that came out of it. And then that gave me the idea that I can actually start a multi-city practice. Because the thought was, it came out of accident. Like I said, it came because I didn't have money for my son. It came, as they say, necessity is the mother of invention. And this is an example of that. I did not have the means, and I had to find the means, and therefore I set up in Bangalore, and that's how the clinic started doing well. And that became a model then for me to follow later on. The second example that I want to give you, story that I want to give you, is that in the same year, 1996, we had just started advertising. And somebody just read an ad in Times of India or some newspaper and called me up and said, "Doctor, do you want to start a clinic in Mauritius?" And I said, "Yes, why not?" And I think this is my first lesson from entrepreneurship, is that unless you are capable of taking risks and unless you are adventurous, you cannot establish anything there. It's always a challenge. So I said, "Yes, why not? Let's start a clinic there." And without meeting the guy, that time there were only no mobile phones, there were only faxes. On faxes, we kind of decided that we would open the clinic 6 months down the road. It was all set up. I went to Mauritius to inaugurate the clinic. I met a journalist who said, "Dr. Saab, मैं भी हिंदुस्तान से हूँ, and why don't you call the vice president of the country to inaugurate your clinic?" I said, "Wow, that sounds so fabulous. I've just landed here and I don't know anybody." And sure enough, I called the vice president, "Sir, will you come to inaugurate my clinic?" And he said, "Yes, come and meet me tomorrow." So I go to his house and meet him, and I tell him, "Sir, will you inaugurate a clinic?" And the first thing he does is he shouts at me. And I then realized that the word clinic in French, which was a spoken language over there, meant a hospital. And I remember his exact words. He said, "Certainly, Dr. Batra, you don't expect the vice president of a country to inaugurate a room." Because he thought he was going to inaugurate a hospital. And then when I told him that I'm opening a homeopathy clinic, then he blew his top. He said, "Do you know that homeopathy is illegal in my country? Do you know that if you start practicing here tomorrow, which you're planning to do, I will put you behind bars? Simple. You will not be able to go back to India." And he said, "I had some other alternative medical practitioner doing that, and I have put him behind bars." Now, when you get a situation like this, you have to think on your feet. It's not easy at all. And so I saw something on his face, and I said, "This is a problem." I said, "Sir, can I treat you for this?" He said, "No, I've been all over the world. Nobody can treat me. It's impossible." I said, "Well, why don't we give it a try?" So he took me to his room, and then, the homeopathy consultation, 1.5 hours later, he came back, and then he was smiling. And I said, "See, sir, I will not do anything which is illegal in your country. My clinic is ready. I'm not going to inaugurate it till I get a license. However, I will request you just send me a message of good day. I've already called a press conference tomorrow, and I will announce over there saying that when the clinic is ready, whenever we get a license, we're going to start." and he did just that. So there was a face saving. After that, for 6 months, I went up and down every 2 weeks, sat outside the door of the president, the vice president, the prime minister, kind of literally begging them and making them experience homeopathy so that they could get a good experience of it, because nothing works like experimental. Once you tried something and it works, you then actually start believing in it. Then ultimately 6 months down the road, homeopathy was legalized, and I'm very proud that I was responsible for actually legalizing homeopathy. And the same country, that wanted to put me behind bars, then said a team of photographers and video people from the MBC, which is the Mauritian Broadcasting Corporation, to do a 2-part series on my life in Mumbai. So that's the end of story 2. The third story, I must say, very quickly, because that's also very interesting. That's my story of Baroda. So the third clinic that I opened was in Baroda, and it also happened by accident. It happened because I had a young doctor who was working with me for a few years, and she was to get married. And she said, "Sir, my in-laws won't let me work anywhere unless I work with Dr. Batra. So you have to open a clinic over here." And so in 1997, I opened my third clinic outside Mumbai, and that was in Baroda. And today now, I visited the clinic after 21 years. It's one of our highest revenue grossing clinics today in India. And it was in a pharma background. It was in a city where people had more pharmacy, pharma industry belief rather than homeopathy belief. But we've grown it over the years, and that's what makes me feel proud. And again, I think what you do is the intention is very important. Hindi mein kahavat hai, kar bhara to ho bhala. So if you do something with a good intention, good heart, ultimately, even if you have to wait, but the return always comes. So these are my entrepreneurial stories, and
Super.
after this, of course, we then developed a business model, and today we are professionally managed, we have CEOs for every vertical, and which gives me time to come and talk to you.
Awesome. And so indeed, sir, what an inspirational story. And this is not just a literature festival or a literature talk, but this is a business pep talk for all the students sitting here. That come what may, in any adverse situations, if you don't give up, you will eventually reach your goals. And not only that, you will shine to the sky, like how Dr. Batra has.
I have 2 lines to say, I'm sorry, but it's also literature,
Absolutely.
so I'm allowed to speak at least some literature as well. Right?
Absolutely.
So, just to inspire this, there's a little saying in Hindi which says, "Kadam चूम लेती है मंजिल आकर, कदम चूम लेती है मंजिल आकर, अगर राही खुद अपनी हिम्मत न हारे." And to add to that, also from the filmy dialogue of my friend Raju Hirani, and he's also doing Billion Homeopathy, by the way. So, lage raho munna bhai. That's it. So once you have pursued something, you follow it with great ambition, great intent, be after it. I find a lot of young people today being very changeable, and they don't have the patience to stick with something. So I think you need to pursue it. There's an English saying also which says, perseverance is the key to success. So unless you persevere, unless you keep trying hard, unless you keep banging your head, sometimes against the wall, you will not succeed.
Alright, so can I be a devil's advocate in the sense that when you talk about being patient, that is what a lot of people attribute homeopathy to. जैसे कि अगर आपको क्विक चाहिए तो एलोपैथी के पास जाओ, इवेंचुअली ग्रेजुअली धीरे धीरे चाहिए तो होम्योपैथी के. How true is that?
So that's pretty untrue.
Okay.
And I'm very aware that today we are part of a kind of a Maggie generation, if I may use that, because we are part of an instant generation. Everybody wants instant gratification, and even for food, we want food in 2 minutes now, because that's the byline of the Maggie noodles, saying that we want food in 2 minutes, the 2-minute noodles. So we are a very jhatpat organization, community today, and we want everything very quickly. Now, having said that, let me also say this, that today a lot of followers of homeopathy are not old people, but they are young people, which means that young people actually turn into homeopathy and they are attracted to homeopathy, which is why it has made homeopathy the second largest system of medicine in the world, according to World Health Organization. It's the youngest and the second largest. It would not have been possible if young people were not to come to homeopathy, because they are forming the bulk of the base, of the mass really. So I think they also have a lot of fondness, a lot of awareness. What's happened is social media has also created a lot of awareness. among young people. So today they have a lot of awareness of iatrogenic disorders. They now believe that they are looking for safer options. They want to go for natural treatments. They don't want to go for chemical treatments. So there's a whole word that is coined and a whole segment of diseases which is called iatrogenic disorders. Now, do you know that in America alone, every day 350 people die of an iatrogenic drug-related disorder every day. Now, this is the equivalent of one plane crash. And if one plane crashed and 300 people died, it would make international news. It doesn't happen with drug-induced disease. But today there's a lot of awareness. And therefore today young people are looking for holistic treatment, they are looking for complete treatment, they are looking for treatment from the root, from within, and they are looking for safer treatments. And that's why more and more of them are turning to homeopathy.
So basically alternative therapies. So in the sense that there's a lot of awareness for how should I say the natural way of treating your body or cleaning your toxins or whatever. So does it fall in the same line?
So in a way, yes, because all these fads, if I may use that word, actually start from the Western coast. They all start from America. The hippie movement started from there. Berkeley is one famous university where all these things, all the out of the box, if I may use that word. Similarly, all these out of the box treatments start from there. It's always the Hollywood stars who start going for holistic medicine and natural medicine. But and therefore, yes, partly yes, that today people are more aware of holistic medicine, and therefore more and more people are turning towards it. Also now today there's been a compromise between allopathy and homeopathy, if I may use that word. So today, nomenclature-wise, I know that, again to quote literature, Shakespeare said, what's in a name? A rose by any other would smell as sweet. But that's actually not true. Because we started calling it alternative medicine, there was a huge pushback from the industry, saying that alternative means you cannot take allopathy. You have to take only homeopathy instead of allopathy. So the moment you say something instead of, then the establishment gets threatened. And today we are challenging medicine because we are the number 2 medicine. We are challenging allopathy. We are challenging traditional medicine. And we are challenging it with a very strong fist, even though there is a huge gap between the two. But we are actual, very potential challenges. So internationally then, to buy peace, homeopathy now comes under something which is called CAM, which is complementary and alternative medicine. Now because you change the nomenclature,
right,
and you called it complementary, that means you are also giving allopathic medicine, but you can also use homeopathy if you like. So this is a way of buying peace with the establishment, if I may say so. And I think nomenclature is very important. I was talking to your social media team, and they were telling me that they call it social media and impact. I think that's a very important thing because ultimately social media is meant for impact. It's not meant for taking my photograph or what breakfast I'm eating and what food I'm eating and what kind of clothes I'm wearing. It's actually meant to create an impact. So nomenclature is everything, and now it's called complementary and alternative medicine.
Superb. Very well put, sir. So since this is a literature festival and the book that you've written, The Nation's Homeopathy, now I want to understand how did it come into being? What kind of sort of motivated you to write a book? Because as I understand, you were already, this was in 2001, and by then you'd already established your practices in multiple places, right? So then what was the thought behind writing a book?
This book was only 2 years old, and it was not in 2001.
2021.
21, sorry, yeah, that's correct. So again, somebody approached me. Like I said, everything is about opportunities that you get. If you make the right decisions, you are on the right track. If you make the wrong decision, you suffer. So somebody offered me and said that, why don't we do a story on your life? And I said, okay, that sounds interesting, but how do we do it? And so they said, don't worry, you come and sit with us. And then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, I was locked for 1.5 years in my Portuguese home in Goa. And I was in a city, in a small little village called Vadodara, which is actually called the Writers' Village. Because the best writers actually come there October to February. So maybe there was some inspiration there. But I think what I really did was that, and then started writing my biography. And I would make sure that every day I would write 1,000 words. And I would not, sleep until then. So I actually put in about 8 hours of work every day to write my biography. The idea of writing a biography was that I wanted to share my story with everybody. and I wanted other people to benefit because I didn't want the learning curve that I had gone through. I didn't want the younger generation to go through the same thing. Now, whether they are homeopaths or whether they are allopaths or whether they are business people and they want to be entrepreneurs, they will face the same challenges that I faced. So I then started, and I also wanted people to learn from my life and from my. It was for my 70th birthday that I inaugurated this. I'm not going to tell you my age, okay? But it was for my 70th birthday that I wanted to publish this book, and then of course COVID was there. So I managed to take it out by then. But so the idea really was that could I inspire people and could I talk about it? I had a lot of challenges. So I got offered by some multinational companies to write my book. But what they wanted was they only wanted to hear a business management book. And so I had to refuse it. So after I read 75% of the book, I had to change my publisher. Because they said, we only want you to publish how you do the world's largest clinic, nothing else. So they wanted a business management book. And I said, I want people to learn from personal experiences of life and not just this. So I refused. And then I went to the next publisher, and again after writing 90% of the book, they said the same thing. And then they cut out 7 chapters from my book, but ultimately I held on. And again, like I said, perseverance is everything. So I perceived and continued, and I then finally got to see the light of day. And then the book, which was called The Nation's Homeopath by HarperCollins, was published. And half of the book has got my life's challenges and the way my childhood and how I grew and the challenges that I faced coming from a small city like Lucknow and Agra into a bigger city like Mumbai, and get kind of also integrated into an English-speaking school from having done your basic education in Hindi in UP. So that's also a challenge. So I've spoken about all of this in my book, and ultimately I'm happy that they did keep my life as well as my professional journey. Both.
Super. So when we talk about things that come to India, like essentially we spoke about homeopathy, which is a non-Indian practice, but now it has become Indianized. You know how it happens with food. So हम यहाँ पर जो खाते हैं वो Indian Chinese खाते हैं. तो Chinese खाना तो हमारे पैलेट को शायद वो सूट ही नहीं करेगा. Even brands like McDonald's, when they have to come to India, they have to introduce vegetarian menu, which is not there in their abroad lists. So when homeopathy has come to India now, has it gotten impacted by the Indianization? If yes, how much?
So the answer to that is no. Like I said that, a rose by any other would smell as sweet. Homeopathy in any other form will always work. So it makes no difference whether you call it Indianized homeopathy, European homeopathy, medical homeopathy, it makes no difference at all, or Western homeopathy. Homeopathy is homeopathy. It is a science which works, period. That's all. Now there are different ways of practicing. So just because you can have McDonald's is McDonald's, but you can have an aloo tikki burger and you can have a beef burger, depending on which country you are in and depending on which city you are in. So depending on that, I'm a strong vegetarian, so I can talk about it, right, publicly. But so you can adapt the method with which you eat, and that can happen. So you have, for example, now all over the world, homeopathy is actually well known because of its OTC products. So it's the complexes which sell very well. So you go to a pharmacy and you'll find a bottle there in Boots or any other big company. In France, you'll find that almost 90% of all the pharmacies have a homeopathic division. Now the homeopathic division is not selling you belladonna, arnica, single remedies. It's selling you medicine for cold, medicine for cough, medicine for migraine, medicine for backache. So they are off-the-counter medicines. And this is the difference between foreign homeopathy, if you want to point it that way, and Indian homeopathy. Indian homeopathy, there are a lot of homeopathic doctors. Abroad, there are very few. Again, to give you an idea that in Europe, you can't practice homeopathy unless you're an MD doctor. So if I have to have a clinic in Europe, which I have to actually employ an MD doctor and then I have to apply a homeopath who tells the MD doctor what to prescribe. Right? And that's how it works. So that is why the only difference is that the clinical practice of homeopathy is less abroad and the pharmaceutical practice of homeopathy is more abroad. In India, it is the reverse. In India, there's a very poor delivery system, so you don't find that much of homeopathic OTC products. It's against the principle of homeopathy because it's bespoke medicine, it's personalized, and there are so many doctors over here. The highest number of doctors in the world in homeopathy are in India. The highest, so 200,000 practicing doctors in India, the highest in the world. 5 crore people of India regularly take homeopathic medicine, which is also the highest in the world. So this whole connect between a professional doctor and a patient is very high in the kind of practice in India, and that's the difference. While abroad, it's more commercialized, it's more OTC. That's the difference.
So you also mentioned about how you were stuck in Goa in your Portuguese home. It would be a dream for many, by the way, sir. That was such a stroke of luck, I would say. But so during that time, the COVID time, when the entire world was talking about when will the vaccine come out, or what is the vaccine that's going to come out, what was happening with homeopathy in general? Was homeopathy doing anything to kind of wade away COVID-19?
So that's a very good question, and we are very actively involved, my company, into giving preventive doses. So as you know that the Indian government, through Ayush, had recommended a simple homeopathic medicine called arsenic alb, which they said is a preventive for COVID. Yeah. And so through my CSR, we kind of donated 2 crore doses of pre-COVID medicine, preventive COVID medicine to everybody. And I'm happy to say that the entire Maharashtra Police Force, not just the Mumbai Police Force, but the Maharashtra Police Force got 3 doses of preventive medicine for us, because there was a request from them saying that can you give us something. And so we actually treated the entire Maharashtra, because the police force was on the roads. They were not sitting at home. And therefore they were the first line workers, together with the doctors who could get affected. And we gave them free medicine and their families, totally. And they're so grateful that they've given us a kind of a video testimonial thanking us for it. So yes, it worked very well. And the other thing also was that also in cases of post-COVID problems, and there were a lot of them. We had a lot of people suffering from anxiety and depression. Homeopathy works very well for that, and actually treated a lot of patients who were really recovered from that. A lot of people had respiratory problems, like they had a lingering cough for 2 months. Again, homeopathic medicine did very well for that. So I think pre-COVID and post-COVID, and not so much during COVID, during the treatment. Okay, so there was a lot of people's hospitalization, there was a mass mania saying that, there's no oxygen and you have to go to hospital and things like that. So that was a challenge. But other than that, I would say that the pre-COVID phase and the post-COVID phase, homeopathy did very well. And actually contributed a lot to the Indian society and for the people to recover. And actually what happened was that I think it also then increased the belief in homeopathy. Because people who took it and their families never got COVID, in spite of it being all around them, they said, homeopathy to bahut acha kaam karti hai. Now we should go for it.
Great. So your book titled as Homeopathy Simple Remedies for All Ages. Essentially you're sitting with students and the Gen Z lot. A lot of us also now are not really anxious, but yes, we have different types of anxiety. फोटो पे लाइक्स नहीं आती तो एंजाइटी आ जाती, वो जोमेटो वाला 10 मिनट लेट आता है तो एंजाइटी आ जाती।
If he unfollowed me, anxiety.
अरे वो तो सबसे बड़ा,
बहुत ही बड़ी बात है।
उसके तो एंजाइटी नहीं सर, उसके तो बड़े बड़े कारनामे हो जाते हैं। तूने मुझे अनफॉलो कैसे किया?
Anxiety turns into depression. So it can't be. Why did he unfollow me? That's very bad. So,
how dare you unfollow me?
Yeah, absolutely.
So can you suggest some remedies for that? Are there any remedies in homeopathy if someone unfollows you?
Well, hopefully nobody unfollows me, and because that will make me go into depression. I have to go to another doctor then for treatment, another homeopath. But jokes aside, I think yes, it's a very competitive world, and we are all very, very conscious of the way we look and feel, and unfortunately, we are also very conscious about the way people think of us. I think that has to change. I think it's not part of your thing, but I would just happy to mention over here,
Please.
that I got ordained as a guru and as a Swami. This is my Swaminarayan following, and I've been blessed by the Pramukh Swami. I've been blessed by Osho, so I carry these things. And one of my biggest learning through my spiritual journey has just been that you need to feel happiness from inside. Nobody can make you happy. Because if your happiness is dependent on relationship or anybody outside you, something bad is going to happen and then you're going to be unhappy. If you want to be happy, you have to be happy with yourself. And you have to be happy within you. So happiness comes from within. I was asked to be on a very interesting panel by some important company, and they titled it Pursuit of Happiness. And I told them there's nothing like pursuit of happiness, because you can't pursue happiness. The moment you start pursuing something, it disappears. It will go away. So people who look for happiness will always feel sad. They'll always, because they don't find it.
True.
You have to find happiness within you.
Within.
So also similarly, if you are looking at social media, you have to be happy the way you look. You should not feel unhappy just because somebody else looks better than you. Today, a lot of this anxiety and stress that comes because of competitiveness. We have competitiveness in our studies because we want to stand first, we want to get higher ranking, we want to do this. We are competitive because we want to look better than somebody else. We want more likes and more followers than somebody else. So I think the longer that think about being part of society and too dependent on it, and being too dependent on what somebody else thinks of me, is never going to make me happy, and no kind of medicine is going to work. So the idea is that you have to change that. So it needs a lot of course correction as well. But yes, there are homeopathic medicines like Carifos, for example, which you can take. It's like an anti-anxiety medicine. Arsenic alb, Argentum nitricum, very, very good medicine for anticipatory anxiety. So I've seen, for example, with all my 50 years of homeopathy experience, that any time before an interview or before an examination, you'll always find that toilets are always full. And unfortunately, I've always found that with no disrespect to the male sex, I've always found that male Indians have a very weak bladder. So every time a flight is announced, they are always missing. Mr. Patel, kya chahiye? Please report, because Mr. Patel has gone to the toilet. He has gone to the loo. So there's something medically called now irritable bowel syndrome, and something medically called irritable bladder syndrome.
Okay.
Now this comes because of anxiety.
Okay.
And this is really very classical example. And therefore, for people like this, Argentum nitricum, taking a few very, very good medicine. So, like this, there are many other medicines for different problems. And I think some of the common problems of this group really is, of course, anxiety, also depression, because when I was doing research for my book, which is my next book coming up next year on mental health and homeopathy, 700,000 people die, young people die every year of suicides because of whatever, depression and anxiety. And the other thing which is very interesting is that from the time the symptoms come to the treatment starts, the gap is 7 years. So people don't even recognize it, because what happens is with the physical element, you get a body ache, you get a headache, you can check it. With this, it's not very perceptible. So you find people suddenly becoming aggressive, they suddenly start shouting, they become irritable. You don't realize that this could be an early sign of schizophrenia. And therefore it will take you 7 years by the time you actually recognize and start taking treatment. So it's very important to actually start early treatment, recognize it and treat it so that you can prevent it. But this is one aspect. The other things, of course, are look good, feel good. Everybody is worried about hair loss, they're worried about acne, they're worried about, So for this again, we have to understand that local treatments don't help. They help, but up to a point. So I'll just give you a very quick example. So for example, now if you look at hair loss, there are 40 different medical reasons for hair loss.
Right.
Now when we treat a woman, for example, the 3 commonest reasons are PCOD, anemia, and thyroid. Now unless you treat this from the root, the hair loss is not going to go. And the same thing is with acne. You get a lady who's got acne and little hair on the chin, she's probably got PCOD. Now unless you treat the PCOD, the acne is not going to go. So applying a local cream and just suppressing it is not the answer.
Not the treatment. True.
So you got to actually take holistic treatment, you got to get it treated from the root, and that is how then you can actually get cured. So the idea is to understand that there are no simplistic solutions, and these are chronic problems and they are deep-rooted. And therefore you should actually go to a professional homeopath and get treated.
Very true. So sir, since you were talking about mental health and how you said that depression is costing so many lives every year to our civilization, homeopathy is essentially a personalized medicine. And I've been to homeopaths, so I know that they'll ask you कि भाई आप क्या करते हो, कहाँ से करते हो, आप क्या pressure है, क्या tension है, से लेके a range of different questions, and after that the medicine is prescribed. Is there a relationship between mental health and homeopathy in general?
There is no relationship between mental health and homeopathy, but the only relationship is that homeopathy is human medicine and homeopathy is holistic medicine. And because it is holistic, it takes mind and body together into account. As a matter of fact, Hahnemann founded the concept of mental disorders 225 years ago, before World Health Organization recognized it as health being mental, emotional, spiritual, all together, as a balance of all. Hahnemann recognized it and homeopathy recognized it more than 225 years ago. So to that extent, today there's a whole group of medicines called psychosomatic medicines and treatment and diseases. So because of psychosomatic problems, and I'd like to hear a very interesting case I'd like to share. So I had a patient who came to me for the chronic backache, and he suffered for a long time. And he'd been to a lot of orthopedic doctors and a lot of specialists for his treatment, nothing worked. And he came to me also for treatment, I also tried, it didn't work. Then some of, in a kind of a detailed interview, I suddenly realized that he actually told me this, that he said, I was working for a multinational bank, and I was the boss over there. And then the bank shut, in between the government stopped foreign banks from operating there, so this is the bank shut. And I had to look for another job. And I went for an interview, and in that interview, my junior who was in my company kind of interviewed me and ridiculed me. कि आप यहाँ मेरे पास अभी नौकरी के लिए आए हो, and that was like something which happened like 5 years ago, and it stuck in his mind.
Yeah.
So one simple homeopathic medicine called Staphylococcus, which is very good for ailments from slight and from hurt, which are suppressed, was given to him. After that, his chronic backache disappeared.
Oh.
So this is the connection between mind and body. So again, I say this as an example for asthma, for example.
Yeah.
It's a cause and effect. So for example, if you're asthmatic, if you're anxious, you get asthma. Because you're asthmatic, you're also anxious. Because you don't know when my next attack will come. And so the cycle is there. So the cycle can only be broken by taking proper constitutional homeopathic medicine.
I'll once again be the devil's advocate by saying that a lot of people say कि ये तो शक्कर की गोली है. A lot of people also attribute or want to categorize it as a placebo effect. What is your counter to that? How do you respond to that when someone says कि ये तो placebo effect है, इसमें तो क्या ही करी, जो भी किया मेरे मन ने किया.
So किया तो है ना कुछ. So as long as it works well, it is good. And I always say this, whether it is, and it's not, I'm not being defensive, and I'll answer that question as well. But I always say this as a joke, whether it is allopathy, homeopathy, or Tirupathy, whatever works for the patient works well. And you should be grateful for it. And disease keeps evolving, and you never know what will work for whom. So you can't throw out the baby with the bath water and say nothing works. Now coming back to the placebo effect, the basic thing is that everything about homeopathy is clinically documented. So once you have clinical evidence to prove that it works, that argument goes out the window. That argument comes, I don't want to get into it now because it's a very long scientific discussion and this is a literary platform. So I'll but that comes because of the minute doses of homeopathy. Because of something which is called potentization, it keeps going less. So if I cannot find that medicine, how does it work? But for this, in 1983, a French author called Jacques Benavista had written a book called The Memory of Water. So basically,
I've heard about it.
Yeah. So basically, it really talks about that even though you don't find the original substance, you cannot determine it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So it's just like, please raise your hand in this audience. How many of you have seen God? How many of you believe in God?
All of us.
There you are.
Most of us.
That answers my question. So just because you don't see it, doesn't mean it doesn't work. And now it's scientifically proved as well. There's a very interesting study that was done by a group of IITians from Mumbai, which actually proved that even in potencies, the original substance can be found. It's just that we never had the method to determine it. I mean, today you've got, electronic lithography, you've got so many other methods of finding out. So when you experiment like that with latest technology, you can actually find the original substance, in the very minute forms, you can find it in the medicine. And therefore, it's not really a placebo. There's something there in very minute doses, and it does work.
So just last week, I was speaking with a very renowned doctor here in Vadodara, and we were just generally talking about different types of medicines. And he said that any medicine that you put in your body will give you at least some side effect. So while it will cure your problem, it will also have a side effect. It can be big one, small one, whatever. कुछ तो अलग करेगा क्योंकि आप body में कुछ अलग डाल रहे हो. Does that stand true for homeopathy, or is it completely the opposite? कि इसका कोई side effect होता ही नहीं.
So yes and no. And why I'm saying yes and no is because basically when we talk about side effects, we should really differentiate by talking about toxicity. So we talk about toxicity with some chemical medicine. We talk toxicity with some rare things that we take in our body, minerals and all that, which kind of can cause kidney failure, liver damage. Homeopathy does none of that. It doesn't do any of that because it's very, very minute forms. So it is in such small forms that it cannot cause toxicity in your body. So it cannot damage your liver, it cannot damage your heart, it cannot damage your kidney, it cannot give you kidney failure, even if you take it for 10 years or 20 years. Now, having said that, anything that you take and anything which is having an effect on your body will have some other effect, which you sometimes cannot determine. Now, the thing about homeopathy is very often homeopathy does not have any physical effects and it has no toxicity. However, it can give rise to certain unobserved side effects which you don't know. Okay. And it can affect you emotionally. Okay. So again, there are different types of medicines in homeopathy. One is like acute, like Vadodara, so on and so forth, which you use just for that. And then there are deep acting medicines like lycopodium and sulfur. When you use these medicines, the effect of that can last for a long time. You don't even know it. So for example, I know a lot of homeopaths, they give pulsatilla, for example, which is a medicine for period problem, dysmenorrhea to young girls. And suddenly the girl starts becoming very sensitive, she starts crying. So what she's actually doing is she's actually started proving pulsatilla. And that takes some time. So sometimes you can get temporary emotional side effects of homeopathic medicine which you don't recognize. And therefore it's good to talk to your doctor about it.
Oh, very nice. So now we've spoken at length about homeopathy and the practices and the advantages and how it functions. Now since this is a literature festival, let's come back to books and your latest book, Heal with Homeopathy, where we talk about the study of personalities. How much important is it?
Very important. I'm saying each and every one of us is a living personality. And by the way we look, by the way we structure, by the way our hair, skin, the way we dress, the colors we choose, all of that actually determines a personality. So everybody is a personality, and homeopathy is full of personalities like this, and recognizing them. And then personality is not just emotional, it's also physical. So for example, if somebody is, like I've seen, somebody who got say minor OCD, I'm probably using that word because it's a medical word, obsessive compulsive disorders, but people who are very, very particular. कि ये फूल ऐसे क्यों रखा है, ऐसा होना चाहिए. My name is not actually straight, it should be like this. Okay, so when they think like this, a lot of them suffer from migraine because they are so meticulous and so particular. So there's a correlation between the mind and the body, and that's really my answer.
So I think this has been a great session and a great learning, lot of knowledge about homeopathy and about also human life in general, about entrepreneurship. I can open for questions and I can take one or two questions from the audience if there are any. If you want to ask a question, you can raise a hand. Perhaps we can send a mic to you and then you can ask a question. There's one question here. Wait, take this one. Take this one.
What's your message for today's homeopathy?
I really can't give any message because I am flawed myself. People who give messages are people who sit on high pulpits. I can't do that. I am one of you. I have learned the hard way. I made my own mistakes in life. Now, if you ask me generally, I would only say two things. I always say this: sit down, don't stand, relax. So I just say two things, and not just for homeopaths but generally. I always say there have to be two P's and two D's. The two D's are discipline and determination. If you want to do anything in life, you have to be disciplined and you have to be determined. And it's the same with homeopaths. If there are young homeopaths wanting to make a career, you must have discipline. Today I find that they're a little casual and not so, when you are disciplined, you can get a lot more out of life. So discipline and determination. Like I said, don't give up easily. Keep following your ideals and your dreams. I always say this, that they aim too low, who aim below the sky. So aim high, aim for the skies, but always keep your feet on the ground. So always be grounded in whatever you're doing. Don't have, शेख चिली के ख्वाब. You just keep thinking of dreaming. Lot of us are dreamers and we don't know. So these are the 2 Ds. And then come to the 2 Ps. So the 2 Ps are passion and purpose. So no matter what you do, if you do it with passion, you will succeed. And if there's a purpose to that passion, then that's Sone Pe Suhaga. It's like, for example, I do charity, I do singing, I do photography, and I've had 53 international exhibitions. But what drives me is the fact that I do it for a visually challenged group of people. So if through my hobbies, I can contribute to somebody else's life, if I can bring light to people who cannot see, if I can look after an old age home through my singing, then that's a purpose. So anything that is purpose driven and has passion will always succeed.
Thank you for the answer. I have one more question before I wind up the session. If I can have a show of hands and I can send the mic. Okay, there is one gentleman there.
Hello, sir. Sir, what can be the challenges that a homeopath can face in today's time?
Very many actually. The first, of course, we already discussed. There's always opposition from other doctors. Why are you practicing? It's a non-scientific system of medicine. And I think the biggest challenge really is to convince people and to get more patients and to get them at a low-cost acquisition, because you can't advertise on television and then get people. So what is the best is word of mouth. So how do you actually build ambassadors of homeopathy? I mean, I want to just share this with you very quickly. I know we're running out of time, but it's nice to talk about personal experiences. So when I set up a multi-city practice, I was already very well known, famous in Mumbai. But every city that I went, people always asked me, they said, Doctor साहब आपने मुंबई में तो पेशेंट को क्योर किया, पर बैंगलोर में किसको किया? आपने बैंगलोर में तो किया, पर बड़ौदा में किसको किया? So they'll always question you. So you need to put those ambassadors, which are very important. And I always say this, with great humility, that it is said that an actor's life is very difficult, because they say God sits in the box office every Friday. तो अगर उसकी फ्राइडे की पिक्चर चल गई तो उसका भाव बढ़ जाता है, अगर वो फेल होगी तो भाव कम हो जाता है. With a doctor and with a homeopath, it's even more difficult, because statistics don't matter. Always remember this. I cannot tell my patient I have treated 10,000 patients of migraine, but if I failed in your case, I'm a failure.
Right. True. Very true.
So every patient is important, and you have to succeed with every patient, and that's the challenge that we face.
Super. Super. So with that, sir, like you said, brand ambassador patients होते हैं, but you are a brand ambassador for homeopathy in India, and I'm sure worldwide, because the entire world is looking up to homeopathy being practiced in India. Like you said, maximum number of clinics and maximum number of homeopaths here in India. And also you've been a leader, an author, an entrepreneur, of course a doctor, humanitarian works, you've done so many. Would you want to leave a message for students today?
I think I just leave a wish rather than a message. I've already said the message because they've asked me that question. And I'd like to hum for you 2 lines of a Kishore Kumar number, because that's the message and the wish that I have for my grandchildren, for this world. And of course you can all sing along. चल के तुझे मैं लेके चलूं ऐसे गगन के तले, जहाँ हम भी न हो आंसू भी न हो, बस प्यार ही प्यार पले, ऐसे गगन के तले, ऐसे गगन के तले, ऐसे गगन के तले.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
अगली बार we need to have a singing session with Mukesh Batra. डॉक्टर साहब के साथ अगली बार हम गाने का एक सेशन करेंगे सर. गिटार का लेके आऊंगा मैं, हम बैठ के जैम करेंगे. So your final words for Vadodara Literature Festival, कैसा लगा आपको यहाँ पर आकर?
Outstanding. Outstanding.
Thank you.
I think I want to mention here the wonderful work that is being done over here.
Right.
I think it's very important that young people learn how to read, because we are getting, today between the age, research has shown that between the age of 9 and 17, almost 70% of people in India have digital addiction.
Wow.
And therefore it's very important that we have to wean people out of digital addiction. And I know that in certain parts of the country, young people are going for drugs because there is nothing better to do. So reading books is very important. And what reading, so what does is, social media is fabulous. I'm not saying it's not good. But, and so are movies, today we are so exposed to a world.
True.
But today what is happening is, because we are not reading, we are killing our imagination. So when you are reading, you can imagine whatever you want. I mean, the same book, when you read about the war that I've written, you think of something else, and when I read it, I
Sure.
think of something else.
Absolute,
So
absolute.
I think by not reading, we are killing imaginations of young minds. And the world needs young people to imagine. Because the more they imagine, the better and happier world we have.
Super. Thank you. Dr. Mukesh Batra, ladies and gentlemen, what a wonderful session today. Thank you so much for being here, sir. And can I please now request a Stuti from IIMUN to come and felicitate Dr. Mukesh Batra.